Quick question. Are you worried about the social, political, and economic conditions that you're finding yourself in right now? Do you watch the evening news and get really worried about your future? Well, if you're on this website, then I'm going to assume the answer to that question is yes. And if so, then this video is probably one of the most important videos you're going to watch in a very long time. My name is Michael Bash and I represent planb.icu, and I want to welcome you to this series where we're going to explore how to create a plan B, how to protect your future irrespective of what is happening in your social, economic, and political environment right now. So what is a plan B? Well, simply put like this. If you live, work, invest, and hold assets purely just in your country of citizenship, then you're holding all of your eggs in one basket. Any change in that environment would mean that you would be directly affected by it. Now, let's say that basket is a country like South Africa. You would agree that the risk would increase dramatically. So what Plan B is, it is a way of looking at diversifying your financial holdings so that you can protect against fluctuations in political changes, in economic changes, in your country of origin. It is also a way of looking at the differences between immigration, so leaving your country, selling up and moving completely to a new country, versus what we call migration. In other words, the ability to stay and work in your country of origin while having a footprint in another country and another economy. So that is the basics of a plan B. And as we move forward, we're going to unpack exactly how our plan B strategy can work for you. So why Panama? Why did we choose Panama? Well, when setting up planb.icu, we put a number of criteria in place when looking at different countries and regions. Primarily so, ease of access. In other words, how easy is it to be able to get a visa or a permanent residency in a country or region? The second is time on the ground. In other words, how much time do you need to spend in country in order to be able to get a permanent residency, in order to get a work visa or a bank account? And lastly, we looked at cost. How costly is it to be able to get into this country and or region? And when we placed the comparisons of Panama against traditional market spaces such as Canada or the UK or New Zealand or Australia, it comes out tops. First of all, in terms of ease of access, there are a number of visa opportunities created by the Panamanian government, making it relatively easy to be able to access permanent residency within Panama. Second is time on the ground. The entire process in Panama itself could take about 14 days or 2 weeks. Obviously, it's a little bit more time before you leave in order to get all your paperwork in order. But when you're in country, we'd be able to process it within about 14 days. And then there is cost. In comparisons to your traditional market spaces, the cost is much, much lower, making it more accessible and more affordable for the individuals such as yourselves to be able to diversify your holdings through migration or to be able to do a full immigration into their country. So we're going to look at some of the visa options, the main visa options that are available for you to be able to do this. And at the end of that, I'm going to invite you to hit the Get a Quote Now button so that we can engage with you as an individual and build a plan B based on your individual needs so that you can diversify or immigrate to Panama and be able to build your future knowing that you're secured irrespective of what happens in your environment right now. Let's take a look at immigration. Selling up everything in the country that you're in right now and moving across to a new country, starting a new life. It can be exciting. It can be an adventure that we're looking at. But where do you go? Now, the traditional places that people are looking at, the United Kingdom, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, their government regulations are quite restrictive over how they allow people to immigrate into their country. And not everybody has those prerequisites in place in order to be able to access visas, to access permanent residency in these countries. So what do you do then? How do you deal with that? Well, this is why we've been looking at a country like Panama. And the reason being is because Panama has a number of different visa opportunities that make it relatively easy and lower cost for the average person to be able to attain. So looking to immigrate to a country like Panama can be a relatively easier process than looking to immigrate to a country like Canada, for example. But there are a number of challenges that we have to look at. Any person who's looking to immigrate has got to look at issues such as safety. How safe is that country? It's their economy. What sort of economic base are we looking at? The lifestyle, schooling, language. These are issues that are going to come to the forefront and be very important when making the decision as to when to or where to immigrate. Now, don't get me wrong, Panama is a fantastic country. And I think if you explore our website, you'll see a number of different points that we've put into place. But there is one serious limitation when it comes to Panama that you need to understand. And that is, it is Latin America. In other words, it is a Spanish-speaking country. A lot of people out there will tell you, well, that's not going to be such a huge problem because English is quite prevalent. Yes, in Panama City itself, and in maybe some of the more expat-friendly areas like Boquete, you would find a fair amount of English. But it is still predominantly Spanish. And that is going to be a challenge that you're going to need to realize now that you'll have to overcome if you're considering a full immigration. Fortunately, what I have found personally myself is that Spanish is a relatively easy language to pick up and to understand. And if you understood just the basics, it would be enough for you to be able to establish a base or presence in Panama. So what is migration? Well, if immigration is selling up everything and moving to another country, migration would be half of that. And what I mean by that is, migration is the ability to access permanent residency in a country like Panama, to open up a bank account there, to register a company there, so that you could channel your funds from your current rand-based economy to a US dollar-based economy and actually have assets, financial assets waiting there for you without having to fully move into that country. What that means is that you can continue staying in South Africa, you can continue working on your businesses here, whilst building up a nest egg or a safety net in a US dollar-based economy. That means should anything else happen here, you could go to Tambo, get on a plane, fly to Panama, and you would have instant access into that country, already knowing that you have assets there. But let's say, for example, Panama is not the country that you want to immigrate to. Well, having a US dollar-based asset holding, in other words, you're holding foreign currencies in a foreign bank account, would make an application to another country far, far better for you. Let's say, for example, you wanted to go to Dubai. Well, guess what? They accept US dollars in Dubai. In fact, US dollars are accepted probably in about the same amount of space as what MasterCard is. So, migration is really a strategy base. It is about growth and diversification. If you're a business owner and you're looking for new opportunities, well, Panama might be the best place to look for that because it is the sort of gateway to the Americas, both the North America and South American market. It is also hugely involved in international business through the Panama Canal and the shipping, meaning that there is exposure to a number of international markets and companies in that space. So a migration is more of a strategic move than an immigration. An immigration is generally, I have had enough and I need to leave, or I'm seeking new adventure and opportunity and I want to leave. Whereas a migration is, I want to diversify. I want to split my risk that I'm facing right now. I don't like having all my eggs in one basket, and therefore I will go and find a new basket in a new economy and a new currency base, so that no matter what happens to either one of them, I'm protected. If the South African economy drops, well, the US dollar value to that will be higher, thus helping you out. If the American economy were to drop below the South African one, well, then your rand economy would be higher than your US, and you would be protected in either way. let's take a look at some of the visa options. The first options we look at is what we call the investment visas. So your ability to invest or to buy your way into a permanent residency inside of Panama. Now, there are a number of different options within Panama, but not all of them have actually been successfully utilized. So I'm just going to highlight two. And the first one we look at is called the Panama Self-Sufficient Immigration Visa. Now, what this requires is a $300,000 minimum investment into Panama. You could go and buy property, for example, to the value of $300,000, and that investment would have to stand for 36 months. It might be an investment into a bank account of that amount, and once again for 36 months. Now, what this would give you is it would give you a permanent residency card, but not necessarily a work visa. There's a regulation that comes around on that too. And you have to reapply every 36 months so as to make sure that that financial holding is still in place. So it's not one of our favorite ones at this moment in time. The second one in the investment visa space is the Panama Reforestation Visa. Now, what that requires is an $80,000 investment into one of the Panamanian government projects, their reforestation projects. Once again, there is a renewal period that you need to go through. So it is not really one of the options that we've looked at or based our strategy on, but they are available there for you. So the next visa we're going to look at is probably the lowest cost and easiest way of gaining permanent residency within Panama. And that's called the Pensionado visa or the pensioner's visa. And the requirements around that are relatively simple. All you would need to prove is that you receive the equivalent of $1,000 paid monthly into your Panamanian bank account from a pension fund for the rest of your life. What that means is you don't need to be retired in order to access a pensionado visa. You need only be able to prove that you receive $1,000 from an actual pension provider paid into your Panamanian bank account. So things like a government pension, for example, would be constituted as a legal pension provider. Or it would be a financial institution that adheres to regulations such as the Financial Services Board, a banking institution, for example. But it has to be a pension for life. Now, if you're going across as a married couple, you'd have the main applicant and the dependent, your wife or your husband, whichever would be the dependent, then it would be $1,250 a month that you'd have to prove. Now, there is a way to reduce that. And what that would mean is that if you were to invest $100,000 into property inside of Panama, you could reduce that monthly amount down to about $750. The challenge with this visa, though, is that there is no way to get a work permit. And this is why it has to be a pension for life. Because under the Pensionado visa, you would be unable to work inside of Panama, as you'd have to live on that pension that is coming across into your account. The other challenge is that there is no natural link to citizenship. Instead, what they give you is what they call permanent residency for life, with a multi-entry and exit visa attached to that, meaning that you can come in and out of the country as many times as you like for the rest of your life. But for most people, the ability to work is very, very important. And so this option is not necessarily going to be the best option for you. However, let's say, for example, you have small children. Well, and you did have a pension that could pay out for life. They could come across underneath this visa option with you. And that would be an additional $250 that you'd have to have paid out into that bank account every single month. Now, for those kids, let's say, for example, they were 8 years old when you moved there. If they were in country for 10 years, 10 years later, they would be eligible for a work visa, but that would require 10 years of living in country to do that. So the Pensionado visa works out for people that have large investments, that have a pension that's paying across, but it is still not necessarily our best choice of option to gaining permanent residency inside of Panama. So the question is, what is our choice of the best visa option to be able to gain access to Panama? Well, that is through what is termed the Friendly Nations visa. In 2012, then President Ricardo Martinelli, by presidential decree, named 22 friendly nations to be able to gain a fast-track process to getting permanent residency and work visa inside of Panama. And these were countries that Panama had some form of diplomatic ties to or bilateral trade agreements with. In the years since, this has been expanded to a list of 50 countries, in which South Africa is one of them. Now, the Friendly Nations visa used to be a package deal that you would be able to get a work permit as well as a permanent residency through this process. However, since last year, that is no longer the case and the two have been split. But as our clients know, we have a wonderful strategy to be able to assist you with that. But before we get to that, let's unpack this. What is it required to be able to have a Friendly Nations visa? Well, the first requirement is that you have to be able to open up a bank account inside of Panama. And to do that, you require an investment of only $5,000 into a Panamanian bank account. Along with this, you obviously need your typical type of registration papers. So unabridged marriage certificate, unabridged birth certificates for your children coming across. You would require a police clearance that is not older than 6 months and has to be what they call apostilled. In other words, it's a way of verifying that document either through DIRCO in Pretoria or through the Panamanian consulate, once again in Pretoria. You also need a certificate of good standing. So for your SARS documents, your tax documents, you have to have a way to prove that you have some form of financial solvency or way to look after yourself when you're in the country. And there's a number of options around that too. You could use 3 months bank statements or an income statement or your SARS tax clearance certificates at the end of your tax year to be able to show that you can economically keep yourself going while you are in country. Now, there are a number of advantages of using the Friendly Nations visa. One, it is very low cost in comparisons to, for example, the investment visas, where you're looking to the value of $300,000 just to get in and then still have to prove economic solvency thereafter. This way, you're looking at about $5,000. That does increase if you're looking to create a joint bank account, at which point it would be $8,000. But what we can do through the Plan B strategy is be able to get you your permanent residency and your work visa, which, like I said, aren't necessarily mutually exclusive anymore through our patented process. And this is where I'm going to tell you to hit that Get Quote Now button. Because whilst we've shown you some of the visa options and shown you that it is quite easy to be able to get in there, it is our strategy that truly makes Plan B very valuable to you as an individual. But our strategy is based on your individual needs. So go ahead, hit that Get a Quote Now button so that we can engage with you in person and build that Plan B with you in person. Whether you're looking to diversify, in other words, have an offshore bank account where you can grow a US-based economy, or looking to immigrate where you need to get out or want to get out of South Africa. Our individualized process is what's going to be of most value to you as an individual. So don't hesitate. Don't delay. Hit that Get a Quote Now button so we can engage with you directly and build that Plan B so that you can start to secure your future, irrespective of what happens around you, whether you stay or whether you go. It is all about growth. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching these quick videos. It's been a real pleasure being able to present this to you and looking forward to meeting you in person so that we can build your Plan B.